Let's take a trip down memory lane. I'm your host Dewi, and welcome to another Guardians of Wiltshire video. In this video we're going to explore the wonderful world of Middle-earth strategy battle game, the rule sets and the evolution, and my journey through the hobby. And I'm going to sit and paint a single miniature to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Fellowship of the Ring. So I rooted around in my Shire box and found my old Bilbo. He did have some paint on him, but that was a case of simple stripping him and picking off some of the paint, and then he was ready to be primed. So I use black Vallejo surface primer, and then I use Liquitex white ink from above, and he was ready to go. I'm not going to explicitly tell you how I've painted Bilbo along the way. I'm just going to talk about my journey and the evolution of the films and the game. When Peter Jackson set out to create these films that have been etched in my mind since I was a youngster, I would have been less than 4. Who knew this wonderful setting would lead me to YouTube videos, painting miniatures, spending a lot of money, but also leading me to some of my closest friends. It started with the storyboard in 1997 and film production in 1999. Through the imagery of Alan Lee and John Howe, along with the true scale of Richard Taylor and Weta Workshop, this wonderful piece of cinema came to life and burst onto the scene, throwing all notion of fantasy films into the mainstream. The notion that there was only ever going to be 2 films just blows my mind, and definitely would not have conveyed the true story of the camaraderie between the Fellowship and the races in Middle-earth to defeat Sauron. The bond of the hobbits at the start of the journey, like a group of friends off to a tournament, fills me with joy and doesn't give you a sense of dread. The journey of the Fellowship and the heartbreak they'll go through within the first of the trilogy gives great balance. The film has everything, from battles and moments of clarity to betrayal and the death of a main character. Now, I never saw the Fellowship in the cinema, but my parents did have a VHS version of the cinematic release, and I remember being shown that not too long after I got into Warhammer. As soon as I had seen that, I knew that I wanted to see more. I was fortunate enough to go see Two Towers in the cinema with my parents, and it's the first film I remember that my dad didn't fall asleep in. And then I have vivid memories of watching The Return of the King in my lounge, which family friends had brought over on DVD. I remember being led on the floor, head as close to the TV as possible, propped up on my hands with cushions under my elbows, and the Ride of the Rohirrim just sold me entirely. From this point on, I knew this was the fantasy setting I would love for the rest of my days. Having already been into Warhammer a little, I discovered the Games Workshop did a Lord of the Rings line, and I was hooked. My first memories of painting Middle-earth was under my cabin bed, with my DVD player playing McFly's first album, A Room on the Third Floor. Cool, I know. But this isn't the start of our wonderful game. It all started back with the Fellowship of the Ring box set, with a mix of High Elves, Númenóreans and Moira Goblins, and a very basic set of the rules we know today. The innovative priority system and intricate individual model skirmish game unlike any other game GW had produced. And in the years since, how many warriors have performed heroics for you to hold objectives and fight off the mightiest of heroes? All stem from narrative scenarios and games. The epic battles from the scenes of the Fellowship can be played out on the tabletop, through the attack on Weathertop, the Fellowship just surviving Balin's tomb, only for Gandalf to be in a mighty duel with the Balrog on the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, to the fateful ambush at Amon Hen and the death of Boromir. The second edition of the strategy battle game, introduced with the Two Towers, brought the cavalry rules, with the Rise of Rohan leading the charge against the massive Uruks attacking Helm's Deep. This instalment added the option for siege battles too, allowing players to recreate the incredible scene at the Battle of Helm's Deep or the what-if scenario of the Siege of Edoras. The Return of the King expanded the range of profiles and models beyond comprehension, bringing in Aragorn Elessar, the Troll Chieftains, Nazgul Fellbeasts, and many, many more. Plus the War Mummock of Harad, which I remember being on view at the Warhammer store in Bath. A model which I'd wanted from the start of my collection, but only got one firstly a couple of years ago. This was my first edition. I remember playing this rule set in an after-school club with my Urukai against a friend's High Elf force, with the infamous Volley Fire rules. Glad they're gone. The next edition was the Big Blue Rulebook, professionally known as the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game, which was a consolidated version of the previous 3 editions. I didn't play this era much, but I continued to collect the models and paint them on and off through the years. It was only when I went to university and discovered Firestorm in Cardiff that I started playing again. That's where I met Luke and many others, but it's also where I learnt the Hobbit and Unexpected Journey rules. This edition was the largest jump in our game, in rules and profile releases, bringing in Azog, Thorin and his company, along with many new characters from the Hobbit trilogy. The new rulebook also brought a few additions to the core rules, some of the biggest changes we had ever seen. Special strikes for all kinds of weapons, brutal power attack for monsters, making them more viable than previous editions, and magical powers with the ability to increase their potency with heroic channel. To further that, each film brought out small extra books to fill out the characters in those films: Bard, Beorn, Tauriel, and most importantly Smaug, who introduced a whole new stat to the game with his 20 wounds. Through these years I started going to tournaments and met people who loved the game as much as I did, but more importantly loved the world we played in. The guys and girls who attend these tournaments all seem to be around my age too, and into many more things similarly to me. No matter the tournament or location, if you go out with most people from the tournaments, you'll probably attend a rock club or bar. Having similar interests leads to conversation, and from there you gradually move on to topics that aren't SPG or Middle-earth. I spent a good hour chatting to Harry Parkhill of Entmoot and Battle Games in Middle-earth fame in a bar about music, far away from the songs of Middle-earth. And that brings us to the latest edition, which in my view is the best edition of the game, along with the subsequent supplements with all the legendary legions and additional heroes that come with them. So here is my finished Bilbo. I completed him over a couple of evenings, which was great because at the start I don't often pick a single model, and that doesn't relate to an army or a project. This meant that I could just sit and paint without worrying about remembering schemes or doing a batch paint. Most of Bilbo was done with a wet blend, because I couldn't be bothered for washes to dry, and I just wanted to kind of get him done. As a bit of a nostalgia really. I hope you've enjoyed my trip down memory lane, through the starting of our most loved trilogy to the rules and how they've changed across the editions. If you've liked this video, please leave a comment below, like, subscribe, join us on our Discord channel, and it's a great place to hang out and meet lots of like-minded people. And until then, we'll see you soon.